Close your eyes and breathe deeply. Tonight we drift not into fantasy but into history, a history far removed from swords and song, from kings and glory. We journey instead into the quiet corners of medieval life, a world of rough linen, cold hearths, and slow, repetitive days. This is not the Middle Ages of gallant knights and dramatic battles. This is the reality of daily life as lived by the vast majority: peasants, servants, stonecutters, nuns, forgotten children. It is a world filled with routine, marked by hardship, but also deeply human. Through 4 chapters, each gently unfolding like a candlelit scroll, you immerse yourself in the lives of people who rarely made it into the pages of history books. You'll feel the cracked earth beneath your bare feet, smell the wood smoke of a meager fire, and hear the distant tolling of a bell as you walk muddy paths that once teemed with unseen lives. Let yourself drift slowly backward. The wind may carry a faint scent of thatch and sheep. The sky is dim with cloud. Your hands are calloused. Your world is small. Let us begin. Imagine, if you will, the soft crackle of straw beneath your back as the pale light of early morning begins to filter through the gaps in your cottage walls. You are not waking in a bed, not in the sense you may be used to. Instead, you lie on a simple wooden frame, if you are fortunate, or perhaps directly on packed earth, with a mattress stuffed with hay and rushes grown musty over time. The smell is earthy, slightly sour, not unpleasant, but not fresh. The cold is the first thing you notice. It hangs in the air like a quiet breath, settled low over the ground, creeping through every seam in the timber and daub. There is no glass in the windows, just shutters, still closed for now, doing their best to keep out the chill. You curl inward, trying to preserve what little warmth your body has stored overnight. Beside you, bundled under a coarse woolen blanket, lies your spouse. A child is curled in the crook of your legs. Another one, maybe 2, breathe softly nearby, siblings perhaps or cousins. The family sleeps together, not only from love but necessity. Body heat is a resource, and privacy is a concept that lives far from this hut. You share this small space with those you live beside, and sometimes with the animals too. In one corner of the room, just beyond the straw mat, a goat stirs softly. A hen scratches at a wooden crate, impatient for the morning feed. In winter months, the animals are brought inside at night, not from sentiment but survival. They provide warmth. Their breath thickens the air, fills it with the sharp scent of hay and manure, and something else, something warm and living and old. Your tunic, laid near the hearth last night, in the hope it would dry, is still damp. It smells faintly of smoke and sweat. You pull it over your head, slowly, carefully, as the rough wool scratches against your skin. There's a chill in your bones that doesn't leave, even after layering on your second garment. A surcoat perhaps, or an old cloak, passed down from someone older, now patched at the elbows and fraying at the seams. Your feet slip into thick woolen hose knitted by hand, the heels worn thin from months of walking over frozen ground and stony paths. Leather shoes, simple and cracked, wait near the door, stiff with last night's frost. There is no clock, no alarm, no structured start to your day beyond the gradual stirring of light. Still, the rhythm of life here is predictable. You rise with the sun, sleep when it sets, and shape your hours by the toll of the parish bell. That bell has not yet sounded, but the animals are restless. You must begin. The fire in the hearth has long gone cold. A few grey coals remain, buried in the ash, perhaps still faintly warm. You poke them gently with an iron rod, fingers stiff with cold, and add dry sticks from the bundle near the hearth. It takes time to coax the flame back to life, time and breath and patience. You do not rush. There is no rushing here. The day will be long regardless. The room begins to fill with the faint scent of burning wood. The smoke curls upward toward the smoke hole in the roof, but not all of it escapes. You breathe it in, unbothered. It is part of the air here, like the scent of old straw, of unwashed wool, of drying herbs that hang in bunches from the rafters, half forgotten. There is no water inside. You must fetch it from the village well or from the stream beyond the pasture. But not yet. First, there is breakfast to prepare. You cut a slice from a dark loaf, coarse rye bread, hard at the edges but still edible. It was baked several days ago. The crust is difficult to chew, but you dip it into a mug of weak ale, brewed at home or perhaps acquired in trade. There is no fresh milk today. The goat has not yet birthed. Tea is unknown here. Coffee, unheard of. You chew slowly. The bread crumbles in your mouth, dry and sour. It's filling enough. Not satisfying, but adequate. The children gnaw on their pieces quietly. One of them, still sleepy, drops hers into the hearth ashes. She picks it up, brushes it off, and eats it anyway. You say nothing. You sit for a while, watching the fire come back to life. The light outside grows brighter. You can hear others stirring in nearby cottages, doors opening, tools scraping, dogs barking in low voices. Somewhere down the path, the blacksmith's hammer strikes a lazy rhythm. There is no rush to begin your day. And yet, there is no time to lose either. This is your world. A one-room cottage, walls thick with wattle and daub, patched with bits of cloth or animal hide to keep out the wind. The roof sags a little from the last heavy snow, but it stands, it is shelter, and that, in this life, is a blessing. Outside, the world is already waiting, the fields, the forest, the tangled hedgerows in need of repair. Your hands will ache again before noon, your back will protest. But for now, you sit in the dim glow of the hearth, letting the warmth of the fire return to your fingers. The day has begun. The door creaks open. Not a door as you may know it, with polished wood and iron fittings, but a simple plank set in a rough wooden frame. It sticks slightly as you push it outward, grating against packed earth, hardened by years of footfall and frost. The morning air is sharp, damp. You draw your cloak closer, though it does little to soften the cold. Outside, your village stirs in its familiar rhythm. Smoke rises from neighbouring huts in thin streams, twisting into the grey sky. There is little sound beyond the occasional clatter of a bucket, a murmur of conversation, the distant bleat of a sheep from the communal pen. Your feet tread the same path they always have, past the trodden furrows near the edge of the cottages, past the low stone wall patched with moss, toward the strip fields beyond. These fields are not your own, not in any modern sense. You do not own land, you work it, as did your parents before you and theirs before them. You hold it in villanage, which means you owe more than your labour to the Lord who claims this manor. Today, like most days, you begin not with your own patch of earth, but the domain, the Lord's land. You are required to spend several days a week working it, depending on the season and his need. The reeve, a local peasant appointed to enforce the estate's rules, waits near the edge of the field with a tally stick in hand. He does not speak much, he doesn't have to. He marks your attendance with a quick scratch of charcoal. Your presence is assumed, your absence noted. You join the others already there, their shapes stooped and slow-moving, scattered like crows across the field. You pick up your hoe, the wooden handle smooth from years of use. You begin to break the soil. The ground is stubborn, stony in places, thick with clay in others. The frost from the night has softened into a glistening crust that clings to your boots and sleeves. The rhythm is slow. Chop, lift, turn, chop again. It is not exciting, it is not satisfying, but it is necessary. You do not speak much. Conversation is minimal, murmured between labourers during the pauses when backs are stretched and breath caught. Most speech is reserved for sharing tasks or quiet complaints, of weather, of aching limbs, of a child's illness, or a priest's new tithe. The sun lifts slowly, casting a pale silver light across the field. Time passes, but not quickly. There is no variety to the work, only a repetition that dulls thought and sharpens the ache in your shoulders. You move from one end of the strip to the other, the soil turning in familiar clumps beneath your feet. Sometimes you glance toward the manor house in the distance. It sits on slightly higher ground, surrounded by a low stone wall. Smoke rises from its chimney as well, though thicker, richer in scent. You imagine the fire there burns hotter, the bread is softer. The cloaks are lined with fur, not old wool. Still, that world feels far away. By mid-morning your fingers sting, not from cold now, but from pressure and friction. You flex them briefly, but the work does not stop. The reeve passes by again, nodding once, then twice. You know what this means. Time to switch tasks. Now it's hedging, or perhaps hauling timber. If it is spring, you may help repair the thatches or spread muck across the fields. If it is autumn, it is harvest time, grain bundled and stacked into stooks, careful not to lose a single stalk, for the Lord takes a measure from the best of it. And if it is winter, the labour continues, though often in the woods, gathering firewood, braving winds that feel sharper than any blade. There is no holiday, no weekend, only holy days, and even then, only after Mass and prayers, and sometimes not at all. Today you are sent to fetch water. A yoke across your shoulders, 2 buckets swinging from cords. The walk is not far, perhaps 10 minutes, but the path is uneven, winding through brush and past the edge of the village piggery. The pigs grunt as you pass, their snouts buried in slop. You do not linger. The water must return before the hearth grows cold again. The well is a familiar place, ringed in old stones, the rope worn smooth. You lower the bucket gently, listen for the quiet splash, then wind it up slowly. The water is clear today, cold to the touch, your reflection a faint blur in the surface before you disturb it. You carry it back, careful not to spill, though some always sloshes away. The weight is not unbearable, but constant, like so much else in your life. Not impossible, simply unrelenting. Back in the village, others are gathering near the common barn, preparing for the next portion of the day's work. You are among them, a part of the rhythm. You do not choose what to do, you are told. But you know what comes next before it is spoken. You know because this is how your father lived, and his father, and his before that. The bell from the parish church tolls once, then twice. It marks the approach of midday. You pause to take a sip of water. Your hands are stained with soil. Your knees are damp. Your stomach growls faintly. You may eat soon, but only briefly. There is still much to do before the sun falls behind the hills. As you rest, however briefly, you stare at your fingertips. The soil has taken up residence beneath your nails. Your skin is roughened and split, but you do not mind. You are used to it. This is your life. Not dramatic, not fast, but steady, repetitive, predictable. The land feeds you, and in return, you feed it, with your labour, your sweat, and eventually more. But for now there is still work to do. The afternoon light shifts, casting longer shadows across the fields, and though your arms are weary and your legs stiff from toil, a new obligation soon calls you from labour to reverence. The sound begins faintly, then rises. It is the tolling of the parish bell, deep and slow like the heartbeat of your village. 1 peal, then 2. It does not matter what day it is. The bell rings every day. For some, it signals prayer. For others, penance. For you, it is a summons. A rhythm as ancient as the land itself. You make your way toward the church, a squat stone building at the village edge. It is not grand. The walls are thick and weather-worn. Ivy curls around its sides. The roof, once shingled in slate, is patched here and there with thatch. But the door is heavy, and the air inside, once you pass through, is unmistakably different. Cooler, quieter. It smells of wax and time. You remove your cap, bowing slightly as you enter. The floor beneath your feet is of compacted earth, scattered with rushes, some fresh, some old. The pews are rough benches, mostly unadorned. At the front, near the altar, a flickering candle keeps its lonely vigil, its flame dancing faintly in the dimness. Mass is spoken in Latin. You do not understand the words, not really. Few in the village do, but the gestures are familiar. The shape of the priest's robes, the cadence of his voice, the ringing of the small handbell as he lifts the wafer skyward. You kneel when others kneel, you bow your head when they do, you cross yourself, slowly just as you were taught. There is comfort in repetition, in ritual, in believing that, despite the hardships of life, there is a higher purpose, a divine order, that the suffering of this world is not in vain. And yet the church is not only a place of comfort, it is also a presence, unseen yet deeply felt. It watches over you, it guides you, but it also judges. There are rules to follow, fasts to observe, alms to give. Every 10th sheaf of grain must be set aside, every 10th egg, every 10th piglet, if you are lucky enough to have them. This is the tithe. You give not from excess, but from necessity. You give because it is required. Sometimes the tithe collector arrives with a tally stick and a quiet nod. Sometimes with a cart drawn by a weary horse. You offer what you have, not because you fear the priest, but because you fear what might come if you do not. Sin is a shadow that stretches long. You are told that pride, lust, gluttony, envy, these live in every heart. You confess them when you must. You kneel in the small wooden booth and whisper your wrongs, real or imagined, to a voice behind the screen. You are given a prayer in return, a chance to balance the scales. But beyond ritual, there are deeper beliefs, superstitions that live between sermons. You wear a charm tucked in your sleeve, dried herbs wrapped in linen, blessed by a travelling friar. You avoid crossroads after dark. You leave offerings for saints on your hearth, Saint Bridget for healing, Saint Isidore for your oxen. These things are not questioned, they are simply done. They are part of the rhythm. You've seen relics once or twice. A bone kept in a silver case, said to be from a holy martyr, or a vial of what is claimed to be a saint's blood. People travel for days to touch such things. They kneel, they weep. Some are cured, or say they are. Others leave as they came, still blind, still limping, but comforted by the hope. The priest speaks sometimes of heaven, of golden light and eternal peace. You listen and try to imagine it. A place where fields are always green, where your back does not ache, where hunger does not come with every season. He also speaks of hell, less often but always with weight. Fire, suffering, darkness. The words settle in the room like dust. But beyond these far-off places there is purgatory, a place between, where souls wait, weighed down by sin, climbing slowly toward the light. You know it well, this idea. It mirrors your life, neither bliss nor torment, just work and waiting. On some days there is confession, on others a feast day marked with extra candles, or perhaps a procession through the village. You hold a wooden cross or a candle stub and follow behind the priest, your steps measured, your mouth dry with reverence. Children run ahead, old women sing in broken voices. It is solemn, but not sorrowful. At the back of the church is a small box carved with faded figures. It is the poor box. And though you are poor yourself, you are expected to give. A coin, if you have one, a handful of grain, a promise, if nothing else. The church gives too in its way. It helps bury the dead. It names your children. It marries you in front of God, and in death it promises rest. You rise slowly at the end of Mass. The priest's final words echo gently as the door opens once more to the pale light outside. You step back into the day, blinking slightly. The world feels louder now, though nothing has changed. You are not comforted. Not entirely, but you are reminded of your place, of your duties, of the line that runs from your calloused hands all the way to heaven's gate. Evening comes slowly in the countryside, stretched by the lingering glow of the sun, but the weariness in your limbs arrives long before the light fades. Your body, trained to the rhythm of toil, carries the marks of its labor. A dull ache in the knees, a tightness across your shoulders, a stiffness in the joints that never seems to leave, even after sleep. Your hands are the most telling part of you, knotted, roughened, scored with small cuts and thickened calluses. The skin beneath your nails is stained from soil, sometimes soot, sometimes blood from thorns or splinters that find their way into your palms. In your world, pain is familiar. It is not a thing to fear, it is a thing to carry. There is no physician in your village. The word itself belongs to cities, to monasteries, to the world of parchment and Latin, to men who wear long robes and read from ancient books. Instead, you have the midwife, the herbalist, the old woman who lives near the edge of the woods, who knows which root will dull a toothache and which leaf will ease a fever. You trust her, not because she is learned, but because she is steady. Because she has seen many winters and knows what to do when the baby will not turn, or when the breath comes shallow, or when the red rash climbs a child's neck. When you are ill, you do not rest, not entirely. Work must be done, but you are slower. You wrap a strip of linen around your knee, not a cord around your wrist to hold off the trembling. You drink broth, if there's any to spare, or chew a paste of boiled garlic and honey. Sometimes you visit the herbalist. Her home smells of dried lavender, of vinegar, and herbs hung thickly in the rafters. Her voice is low, her hands steady. She may give you a pouch to tie around your neck, a blend of sage, yarrow, and a bit of iron scraped from a plough blade. Or she may press a mixture into your hand and tell you to steep it in ale overnight. If your ailment lingers, she may say it is caused by imbalance, too much cold in your blood, or too much bile. You do not question it. These explanations are familiar, passed from mother to daughter, from old to young, like the rhythms of planting and harvest. For skin ailments there are salves, for stomach trouble there are mint leaves and a tight belt. For nightmares, a small carved charm of bone left beneath your pillow. But not all cures are harmless. There are also bleedings, you know of them. Perhaps you've had one. A small incision near the elbow, a bowl beneath to catch the flow. It is said to release the poison. It is said to help. Some trust in relics more than remedies. A pilgrimage to the shrine of a saint may be your only hope if illness grows worse. You have heard tales of miracles. A child cured of fever. A woman who rose from her sickbed after touching a sliver of bone wrapped in silver and glass. But miracles are rare, and most lives end not with healing, but with quiet acceptance. Hygiene, as you might think of it, does not exist in the way you know today. You wash when you must, not daily. The water is cold, often muddy. Soap is rare and handmade from ash and fat. You scrape your skin with a rough cloth, rub your scalp with sand, if there is no lye to spare. Bathing is more ceremony than habit, reserved for holy days, weddings, or the arrival of guests. Combs are precious. You share them, passing them from hand to hand, watching as they pull the lice from hair and scalp. No one is free from them. They are simply part of life. The latrine is outdoors, a shared pit behind a screen of woven branches. You walk there carefully at night, guided by torch or habit. The smell is familiar. Not pleasant, but not shocking. It is simply there as the mud is there and the smoke and the straw on your floor. Illness moves quickly through the village. One child falls sick, then another. A cough becomes a fever. A fever becomes silence. You mourn in quiet ways, placing herbs on the door, keeping a candle lit for 3 nights, whispering prayers to Saint Sebastian or Saint Roch, protectors against plague and pestilence. You have heard of the great death, though it has not come in your time, but its memory lingers, stories of carts filled with the fallen, of whole towns emptied, of priests who buried the dead without prayers because there were too many. And yet, life continues. You rise each day with your ailments and carry them through the hours. You share what cures you know. You endure the pains that linger. And when someone dies, the village comes together. The body is washed, wrapped in linen, laid in a wooden box. A candle is lit. Bread and ale are shared. There is no need for eloquent eulogies. Grief is simple. So is comfort. And so you press on, with the ache in your back, with the swelling in your joints, with the limp that never healed quite right. You are not well, not often, but you are alive. And in this world, that is enough. The day has softened. The harsh edge of labor has faded with the lowering sun. Shadows stretch long across the fields, and the air takes on a cooler stillness. You feel it on the back of your neck as you walk the familiar path home. The soil clings to your boots. A shallow ache spreads through your calves. But your hands are empty now. The tools have been returned. The yoke set aside. The work for today is done. As you approach your cottage, a thin line of smoke curls from the chimney hole. It carries the scent of peat and dried wood. It is a sign of warmth, of food, of rest. You push open the door with your shoulder. It sticks slightly, just as it did this morning. The hinges are wooden, bound with simple cord. Inside, the space is dim, lit only by the fire and a narrow slit of amber light that filters through the cracks in the wall. The glow flickers against the uneven plaster, turning shadows into quiet companions. A pot hangs over the hearth, suspended from a blackened iron hook. The contents simmer gently, filling the room with the scent of onions, dried herbs, and barley. It is a thin stew, pottage, as always, perhaps with a scrap of salted meat added for flavour, if any could be spared from last week's ration. A turnip or two, a handful of leeks, enough to warm, to fill, if not to satisfy. The children are seated on the floor, cross-legged or perched on upturned buckets. They speak softly, if at all. One of them stirs the pot with a long spoon carved from elderwood. Another arranges rushes along the threshold, fresh from the nearby marsh, to keep the damp at bay. Your spouse offers you a bowl. It is wooden, worn smooth by many hands. A simple thing. You accept it with a nod. There is little ceremony. Just presence. Just routine. You dip a hunk of yesterday's bread into the hot broth, letting it soften before lifting it to your mouth. It is tasteless but comforting. The warmth spreads slowly from your belly to your limbs, soothing the chill that has settled in your bones. As you eat, you listen. The crackling of the fire, the scrape of spoons, the low murmur of conversation. A child hums a half-remembered tune. Someone chuckles at a story, retold for the 10th time. You've heard it before, you'll hear it again. Familiarity is its own kind of comfort. The walls of the cottage are close, but they are home. Above you, wooden beams hold bunches of drying herbs, sage, thyme, lavender, tied with string and gathered from the edge of the woods. They scent the air faintly, mixing with the smoke and the stew. A small chest near the hearth holds your best things. A knife with a bone handle, a spare pair of woolen hose, a bit of candle wax, tucked away for nights when the moon is shy. These are your treasures, modest but hard-earned. As dusk deepens, you tend to small tasks. You wipe down the table. You mend a tear in your tunic. You lay new rushes in the corners to soak up moisture. A child holds up a wooden doll, its face carved with rough affection, and begins a quiet game. There are no books, no paper, no ink. Stories are passed aloud from memory.
Riddles, proverbs, tales of foxes and saints, of foolish men and wise beasts. Sometimes you tell one, sometimes you listen. There is no audience, only family, only repetition. Eventually, it is time for rest. You bank the fire, pressing the glowing embers into the center of the hearth with a long stick. A few coals will survive the night, if the wind stays soft.
You lay a flat stone across the pot to keep what remains warm until morning. Then slowly you prepare for sleep. There is no true bedroom. The floor is shared. A straw-stuffed mattress is unrolled. Blankets are spread wide, thin but familiar. Children curl together like kittens. You lie down beside them, cloak wrapped around your shoulders, the edge tucked beneath your chin. The fire dims, the last light fades. In the silence, you listen. The breath of your family, the soft scuffle of mice in the thatch, the distant hoot of an owl. These are your lullabies. You do not dream of wealth, nor of castles. Your hopes are simpler. A good harvest, a warm spring, fewer fevers this year. You do not pray for more. You pray for enough. And as your eyes begin to close, the world shrinks once more to this small space. Your hearth, your home, your family, your breath. The rhythm of your life continues, steady and slow, as sleep overtakes you. Night has settled now. Not just outside your home, but within. The fire glows faintly, a cradle of orange nestled in ash. The sounds of the village have quieted. No more hammers, no more footsteps, only the occasional bark of a dog or the creak of wood settling into the hush. You lie still beneath your blanket. The air is cold against your face, but your body is warm, tucked between family, wrapped in old wool and the closeness of shared breath. There is a moment of stillness where sleep is close but not yet certain. A threshold. And in that threshold you wonder, not wildly, not extravagantly, but in small ways. You wonder what tomorrow's weather will bring, if the rain will come, or if the frost will break. You wonder whether the hen will lay again, whether the reeve will call for labour on the Lord's new vineyard or the mill's worn roof. You think about your child's cough, about the small hole in your left shoe, about the threadbare spot on your only cloak. Your dreams are not of riches. You've never seen them. Nor are they of far-off places. You've never known them. Instead, your dreams hover just beyond reach, close, tangible. You dream of a second cow so you might have more milk. You dream of shoes for all the children before winter comes. You dream that the barley will yield enough this year to trade for a bit of honey. You dream of peace, of days where no one falls ill, of evenings like this one, unremarkable, undisturbed. In your world, hope is modest, and resignation is woven into its shape. You do not expect change. Change is for nobles, for priests, for kings. Your path is as firm as the rut-worn roads leading from the village to the manor, walked by generations before you, worn smooth by repetition. Yet within that path there is a kind of grace. You know the seasons, the signs in the sky, the smell of rain before it falls, the feel of good soil between your fingers. You know the songs sung during planting and the prayers whispered during childbirth. You know how to repair a roof with straw, how to tie a cart's axle when the wood cracks, how to keep bread fresh by wrapping it in cabbage leaves. You are poor, but you are skilled. You are tired, but you endure. And though you expect little, You live within your world fully. You share meals. You laugh at misfortune. You celebrate when the cider is strong and the snow is late. You dance at feasts. You mourn the dead. And always, you continue. You may wish quietly that your child will one day serve at the manor, or take vows and join the church, or marry well, meaning marry someone with a stronger roof and a larger plot. These are ambitions, small perhaps, but meaningful. As you drift towards sleep, the cold settles deeper into the room, but it is not unwelcome. It is part of the rhythm, like the ache in your legs, like the scratch of wool at your neck, like the sound of the wind against the shutter. There is no need to imagine yourself elsewhere. You live as your parents did, and theirs before them. You know your place in the world. And while it may not offer comfort in the way you might desire, it offers consistency, predictability, structure. It offers peace, not of luxury, but of repetition. And in this world of little else, where dreams are quiet and days are long, that peace may be enough. Sleep takes you now, slow and silent. The hearth fades. The night deepens. And the rhythm of your life continues, one breath at a time. Imagine now a castle, Rochester Castle, standing tall above the River Medway. The year is 1215 and the air is heavy with uncertainty. The trees have lost their leaves and the wind carries the damp scent of autumn rot and mud. You arrive on foot, your boots sodden from the march, the hem of your cloak stiff with dried dirt. You are not a knight, you are not even a soldier, not truly. You were summoned by duty, loyalty, or perhaps by fear. And now you are here, within these stone walls that will soon become your whole world. The gates close behind you with a groan, then a shuddering slam. Iron against wood, bolts drawn across beams as thick as your thigh. The portcullis is lowered. Men line the parapets. Archers check their arrows. The steward takes stock of bread and barley, dried meat and cider, wax and salt. Everything is counted, measured, locked away. Rochester Castle is a fine fortress, tall, square, austere. Its great keep rises above the town like a monument to endurance. The stone is pale, nearly white when the sun breaks through the clouds, which it rarely does. The halls within are vaulted and echoing. The rooms are cold, even when crowded. The fires, lit from damp wood, crackle more from steam than flame. You sleep where you can. Some are given space in the chapel beneath the gaze of worn saints painted on plaster walls. Others bed down near the stables or in passageways. The straw is thin, the lice are active, but no one complains, not yet. The mood is one of anxious camaraderie. You are part of a cause, they say. Rebels against a cruel king, King John, whose taxes have drained coffers and whose oaths mean little. The barons have risen, and Rochester is their first stronghold. You've heard the name Magna Carta, though it means little to you. You do not read, you do not write, but you know enough to recognize a storm when it is gathering. The days are short, the evenings cold. Meals are sparse but predictable. Stew from the same pot. Ale watered down. Bread with hard crusts. You eat quickly with your back to the wall, watching shadows flicker in torchlight. At night, the castle is filled with whispers, stories of King John's cruelty, tales of his armies gathering. No one knows how many men he commands, or when they will arrive. Only that they will. You are given duties, watch shifts atop the battlements, helping the cook in the draughty kitchen, moving barrels to block the inner gate. Everything is made ready, everything is reinforced. There is an armory, but it is limited. Crossbows with stiff strings, swords with nicks in their blades, Boiling water in copper pots, though not enough oil to pour from the murder holes. Stones are gathered in buckets ready to be dropped. Every corridor is mapped, every stairwell catalogued. You are told to remember the quickest way to the chapel, the well, the donjon, just in case. The men with titles, barons and commanders, remain distant. They wear finer cloaks. Their boots are dry. They speak in low voices in the great hall, their words swallowed by high ceilings and echoing stone. You catch fragments, reinforcements, treaty, siege ladders, treachery. But no answers, not really. Still there is order. The castle was built for this. Its walls are thick, its gates reinforced, its towers high and unyielding. You tell yourself, as others do, that it cannot be taken, not easily, not quickly. Then one morning the sound changes. It begins as a drumbeat, faint, rhythmic, not from within but from beyond. A signal, a summons. The enemy has arrived. You stand on the ramparts and look out. Across the fields beyond the Medway, smoke rises from tents and cooking fires. You see rows of soldiers, their armour dull with rain, their banners limp in the breeze. Siege towers take shape like skeletal trees. Trestles and scaffolds emerge. Ladders, carts, bundles of wood. They are not rushing. They are building, preparing, and you begin to understand. This will not be a skirmish. It will be a siege, a long one. Back inside, preparations grow more intense. The outer gates are triple barred. The drawbridge is sealed with chains. Arrows are counted again. Pitch is mixed. Every man is given a duty. You are handed a spear with a cracked shaft and a rusted head. It is not much, but it is yours. The tone shifts. Laughter fades. Conversation becomes brief, purposeful. The castle feels smaller now, though nothing has changed. The air is thicker. The stone walls, which once felt secure, now feel enclosing. You do not leave. No one does. The town outside is empty. Its people fled, its windows shattered, the bridges blocked. This castle is now your world. Every stair, every corridor, every breath, shared with men who may not see the end of the month. You sleep fully clothed, your boots beside your straw mat. You eat quickly, then return to your post. You listen for horns, for drums, for the scrape of ladders against stone. Time begins to shift. You are no longer sure how long you have been inside. A week? More? The sun does not always shine, and the sky is often the same shade of grey. The bells that mark the hours are silent now. The rhythm of time is broken. There is only before and now. You keep your hand near your weapon, though there is no battle yet. Only waiting. Only the sound of work outside the walls. The ring of hammers. The groan of wood. The occasional shout, sharp and cruel, followed by silence. Within the castle, you begin to feel the stirrings of doubt. The great keep, once a symbol of strength, now feels like a sealed tomb. Its staircases twist inward, its air grows stale, the torches burn low. The food stores are untouched, but you know they will not last. The commander says reinforcements are coming. Perhaps they are, but the gate is barred. The fields are filled with the enemy, and no one outside can hear your prayers. You begin to dream differently, not of victory, but of wind, of open sky, of the sound of a stream. These are not dreams of triumph, they are dreams of escape. But escape is not an option. You are inside the gut of a fortress, a place built to resist, but also perhaps to contain. The walls close in, and the siege has only just begun. The morning begins not with birdsong, but with the crack of an arrow striking stone. It echoes through the air, sharp and sudden, like a branch breaking in the forest. The men on the ramparts crouch low, pressed behind the merlons, their breath rising in pale clouds. Another arrow follows, then another. Soon it becomes a rhythm. a percussion of wood and wind and impact. The siege has begun. King John's army, spread out across the open land beyond the Medway, is no longer silent. The fields that once rolled green and bare are now a city of tents and trenches. Timber frames rise like scaffolding, carts move in lines, soldiers stand in rows, their armor glinting faintly when the sun emerges from behind the clouds. You can see the banner of the king, a field of gold and red rippling in the breeze, and below it the machinery of siege takes shape. Mangonels, ballistae, trebuchets though crude, engines of war, their joints reinforced with rope and rawhide, their counterweights loaded and tested. You watch them from your place on the wall, peering through a narrow slit cut into the stone. Your hands are cold on the shaft of your spear. Your breath fogs the inside of your hood. You do not speak. The men beside you are quiet too. A few chew on salted meat. One mutters a prayer under his breath. Another adjusts the leather strap on his quiver. The mood is not fear, not yet. It is readiness, but readiness without confidence. The first projectiles come not as thunder, but as thuds. Stones, small at first, crash into the outer walls. A lucky strike chips a corner of the battlement, sending a flake of limestone tumbling to the ground below. Dust fills the air. Then comes the shouting. From across the field, voices rise, taunts in Norman French, jeers in rough Saxon. They call you traitors. They call you rats in a cage. They promise fire. They promise rope. Some laugh.
Others simply shout your name, Rochester, as if cursing it into ruin. You say nothing in return. You do not have the words. Instead, you lift your crossbow. You sight the glint of a helmet. You release. The bolt disappears. A pause, then a cry. You are not sure if you hit your mark, but for a moment, the shouting pauses.
That is how the siege unfolds, hour by hour. Arrows fly, stones crash, voices rise and fall, then quiet, then it begins again. The castle holds, for now. At night, the enemy lights fires across the field. Dozens of them. They flicker in the darkness like stars fallen to earth. You can see figures moving between them, shadows, shapes. Some play pipes, others beat drums in slow, steady rhythms. The sound is dull but insistent, like a heartbeat amplified by distance and fear. Inside the castle, the corridors become busier. Men carry arrows, buckets of water, barrels of sand to douse flame. The cook prepares soup from salted pork and barley, doling it out in wooden bowls, one scoop at a time. The chapel fills with smoke from the altar candles. The chaplain speaks of St. George, of endurance, of God's will. You listen, but your mind wanders. To the walls, to the sounds, to the way the stones creak at night, as if groaning under the weight of time and tension. Sleep becomes thin, like the soup. You lie near the outer hall, your cloak wrapped tight, your hands under your head. You close your eyes, but the images do not stop. The flicker of torchlight, the hiss of arrows, the distant clatter of stone on stone. Every creak of timber is a siege ladder. Every gust of wind is a trumpet. Some nights they do try. Small bands creeping toward the moat, dragging ladders across the mud. You hear them before you see them. The bark of dogs, the sudden cry from a sentry. Then the alarm bell, low and mournful, calling every able hand to arms. You run through the darkened corridors. Your boots thud against stone. Your heart beats in your throat. But the attack is small, a test. The enemy retreats before the gates can open. You hear laughter echoing across the fields. It is not meant to win, it is meant to wear you down. And it does. Days blur. Time is no longer counted in hours, but in shifts, in bowls of food, in the number of arrows remaining, in how many candles are left. The castle's interior grows dimmer. Smoke-blackened beams sag under the weight of soot. The air smells of old wool, oil, and fear. You return to the wall again and again, watching, listening, waiting. Sometimes, during the rare quiet hours, you look out toward the horizon. Not at the enemy, but past them, to the trees beyond, the hills, the imagined path home. You wonder who tends the fields now, who draws water from the well, who feeds the animals, if your house still stands, if your name will be remembered. You do not expect glory, but you wonder if anyone will know where you stood. You pull your cloak tighter around you. The stone beneath your boots is cold. Your fingers are numb. Somewhere below, in the belly of the castle, the cook is lighting another fire. Somewhere above, a sentry tightens his grip on a bow. The enemy drums again, slow, patient, inevitable. You return your gaze to the field. The siege continues. At first, you do not notice the hunger. Not really. It begins as a faint hollowness, a missed portion here, a thin stew there. Meals that once filled are now smaller, diluted with water, thickened with bark flour, or old oats swept from the bottom of the barrel. You tell yourself it's temporary. You've endured worse in lean winters. But this does not pass. The supplies were measured at the start, carefully counted, stored, guarded. But even the most generous calculations fade quickly when multiplied by many mouths. And there are many mouths inside the keep: soldiers, servants, cooks, grooms, boys barely old enough to carry a pike. All hungry, all waiting. Each day the rations grow smaller. The bread is grey now, made from a mix of rye, peas, and ground acorns. It crumbles when you touch it, and smells faintly of mould. The ale is weak. The salted meat, what little remains, has gone soft and sour, even in the cold. The grain, once kept in sealed barrels, has begun to sprout with mildew. Still you eat it. You eat everything. You dream of food in strange ways, not feasts, not roasted meats or spiced wines, but simple things: a warm onion, a slice of cheese, a crust of bread with butter. In your dreams you taste them vividly. In waking, your stomach twists with disappointment. Hunger is not only felt, it is seen. The men grow thinner. Faces once round and ruddy now appear hollow, shaded with blue beneath the eyes. Belts tighten to the last hole. Fingers tremble not from cold, but from weakness. Conversations become shorter. Laughter fades. Every movement takes effort. You grow suspicious, not of the enemy outside, but of those within. A soldier is found with extra bread beneath his cloak, hoarded, hidden. He is not punished harshly, but the others do not forget. You start keeping your own portion close, wrapped in cloth, hidden under your straw. You check it often, even when you've already eaten it. Hunger changes everything. Even the horses are not spared. It is not a decision made lightly. But the stables are full, the feed is gone, and so one morning you watch as the first is led out. A grey mare, gentle and steady. She is killed quickly. Cleanly, they say. But still you look away. The meat is shared that evening. Boiled, tough, stringy, it does not matter. You eat it with your hands without speaking. It tastes like salt and sinew and something else. Something that reminds you this is not a meal. It is necessity. Over time all the horses are used. Then the bones are boiled for broth. The hooves too. The hide is scraped, softened, cooked with herbs if any remain. You chew it for hours. You chew it because it gives your jaw something to do. One man boils his boots. Leather, soaked and softened, becomes soup. He eats it slowly with reverence as though it were lamb. You do not judge him. You begin to wonder if your own boots would taste better boiled. Time fractures. The days no longer separate themselves. There is light, then dark, then light again. You stop counting. You sleep when you can. You wake with hunger. You sleep with hunger. Even your dreams grow tired. Your body begins to ache in new ways, not from work, but from emptiness. Your limbs feel heavy. Your breath is short. When you climb the stairs to the parapets, you stop halfway to rest. Some men fall ill, not from sickness, but from hunger alone. They shake with cold that fire does not warm. Their skin turns pale, their eyes glaze. They stop speaking. Then one morning, they do not wake. There is no ceremony. You carry them to the far corner of the lower hall. They are wrapped in wool and left there, in silence. There is no room for graves. You begin to speak less. Words require energy. Your thoughts are slow, sometimes confused. You forget what day it is. You forget who you are. Once, in the kitchens, you find yourself staring at a blackened pot for many minutes, trying to remember if you've eaten. You had, but you cannot remember the taste. The firewood runs low. Smoke no longer rises from every hearth. Only from one or two. The castle is colder now. The walls, once reassuring in their thickness, now trap the chill inside. And outside, the enemy waits. You hear them sometimes, laughing, playing dice, shouting insults. You smell roasting meat, real meat, drifting across the fields. Whether they do it to mock you or simply because they can, it doesn't matter. The scent is unbearable. But still, you do not surrender. No one does, perhaps out of loyalty, perhaps out of fear, or perhaps because there is no one left to surrender to. There are rumors that King John means to make an example of you, that if you open the gate, you will not be spared, that he digs beneath the castle, seeking to bring it down from beneath your feet. You do not know what to believe. You do not know what to hope for. You know only this. The belly empties, and the soul quietly follows. Evening comes slowly in the countryside, stretched by the lingering glow of the sun, but the weariness in your limbs arrives long before the light fades. Your body, trained to the rhythm of toil, carries the marks of its labor. A dull ache in the knees, a tightness across your shoulders, a stiffness in the joints that never seems to leave, even after sleep. Your hands are the most telling part of you, knotted, roughened, scored with small cuts and thickened calluses. The skin beneath your nails is stained from soil, sometimes soot, sometimes blood from thorns or splinters that find their way into your palms. In your world, pain is familiar. It is not a thing to fear, it is a thing to carry. There is no physician in your village. The word itself belongs to cities, to monasteries, to the world of parchment and Latin, to men who wear long robes and read from ancient books. Instead, you have the midwife, the herbalist, the old woman who lives near the edge of the woods, who knows which root will dull a toothache and which leaf will ease a fever. You trust her, not because she is learned, but because she is steady. Because she has seen many winters and knows what to do when the baby will not turn, or when the breath comes shallow, or when the red rash climbs a child's neck. When you are ill, you do not rest, not entirely. Work must be done, but you are slower. You wrap a strip of linen around your knee, not a cord around your wrist to hold off the trembling. You drink broth, if there's any to spare, or chew a paste of boiled garlic and honey. Sometimes you visit the herbalist. Her home smells of dried lavender, of vinegar, and herbs hung thickly in the rafters. Her voice is low, her hand steady. She may give you a pouch to tie around your neck, a blend of sage, yarrow, and a bit of iron scraped from a plough blade. Or she may press a mixture into your hand and tell you to steep it in ale overnight. If your ailment lingers, she may say it is caused by imbalance, too much cold in your blood, or too much bile. You do not question it. These explanations are familiar, passed from mother to daughter, from old to young, like the rhythms of planting and harvest. For skin ailments, there are salves. For stomach trouble, there are mint leaves and a tight belt. For nightmares, a small carved charm of bone left beneath your pillow. But not all cures are harmless. There are also bleedings, you know of them. Perhaps you've had one. A small incision near the elbow, a bowl beneath to catch the flow. It is said to release the poison. It is said to help. Some trust in relics more than remedies. A pilgrimage to the shrine of a saint may be your only hope if illness grows worse. You have heard tales of miracles. A child cured of fever. A woman who rose from her sickbed after touching a sliver of bone wrapped in silver and glass. But miracles are rare, and most lives end not with healing, but with quiet acceptance. Hygiene, as you might think of it, does not exist in the way you know today. You wash when you must, not daily. The water is cold, often muddy. Soap is rare and handmade from ash and fat. You scrape your skin with a rough cloth, rub your scalp with sand, if there is no lie to spare. Bathing is more ceremony than habit, reserved for holy days, weddings, or the arrival of guests. Combs are precious. You share them, passing them from hand to hand, watching as they pull the lice from hair and scalp. No one is free from them. They are simply part of life. The latrine is outdoors, a shared pit behind a screen of woven branches. You walk there carefully at night, guided by torch or habit. The smell is familiar. Not pleasant, but not shocking. It is simply there as the mud is there and the smoke and the straw on your floor. Illness moves quickly through the village. One child falls sick, then another. A cough becomes a fever. A fever becomes silence. You mourn in quiet ways, placing herbs on the door, keeping a candle lit for 3 nights, whispering prayers to Saint Sebastian or Saint Roch, protectors against plague and pestilence. You have heard of the great death, though it has not come in your time, but its memory lingers, stories of carts filled with the fallen, of whole towns emptied, of priests who buried the dead without prayers because there were too many. And yet, life continues. You rise each day with your ailments and carry them through the hours. You share what cures you know. You endure the pains that linger, and when someone dies, the village comes together. The body is washed, wrapped in linen, laid in a wooden box. A candle is lit. Bread and ale are shared. There is no need for eloquent eulogies. Grief is simple. So is comfort. And so you press on, with the ache in your back, with the swelling in your joints, with the limp that never healed quite right. You are not well, not often, but you are alive. And in this world, that is enough. There is no sound in the mornings now, only breath. It rises in clouds from sleeping mouths, curled forms huddled in corners. The great halls are silent, save for the occasional creak of timber or the distant cough of a man too weak to rise. No clanging bells, no shouted orders, no fire crackling. The siege has gone beyond noise. It has entered stillness. You wake on cold stone, half aware, half dreaming. Your cloak is damp from the ground. Your bones ache not from labour, but from lying still too long. Your stomach, long past hunger, feels hollow, not sharp, just distant, like something forgotten. Around you, the others lie in clusters, some wrapped in torn cloaks, some uncovered. One of them does not move. You don't ask. You don't want to know his name. You rise instead and shuffle toward the stairway, what remains of it. The light from above filters down in a pale shaft, dust dancing in it like ash. The walls feel closer now, the ceilings lower. The castle, once so vast and proud, now seems to press in from all sides. There are fewer places to go, fewer reasons to go, and less strength to go anywhere at all. The dead are no longer buried. There is no time, no space, no means. They are wrapped in old linens when available and carried to the corner of what was once a storeroom. The scent lingers. It seeps into everything, your tunic, your skin, your breath. No one speaks of it, but no one forgets. Disease, they say, walks hand in hand with starvation, and now it has entered the keep. Coughs echo down the corridors, fevers burn without fire, sores appear on flesh left too long unwashed, unwarmed, unfed. The chaplain still holds mass. He is a tall man with hollow cheeks, his robes threadbare but his voice calm. He lights what few candles remain, short stubs flickering against stone walls blackened by soot and age. He speaks in Latin, softly, the familiar syllables washing over you like an old chant. You do not understand them. You do not need to. You kneel, though your knees ache. You bow your head, though your neck is stiff. You make the sign of the cross, slow and deliberate. It is not faith exactly, it is ritual, and ritual is comfort. You listen to the words as you stare at the stone beneath your hands, tracing the cracks with your eyes. There is no music, no incense, no choir, only a quiet voice in the gloom and the flicker of dying light. Some still pray for rescue, for strength, for death. It is hard to say which. Others sit in silence, their eyes unfocused, their hands resting on knees or wrapped around empty bowls. You sit with them sometimes. You don't always speak, but the presence is enough. Silence, shared, becomes a kind of warmth. The guards at the parapet still stand watch, but fewer now. Some have collapsed from exhaustion, others have simply stopped climbing the steps. The archers no longer shoot, their quivers are empty, the oil has all been poured, the boiling water is long gone. When the enemy approaches, you do not shout, you do not rally, you simply watch. They know this, you see it in the way they move, they do not hide, they do not hurry. They walk freely beyond the moat, laughing, pointing. One of them leaves bread on a stone. A cruel gesture, a mockery, or perhaps pity. You do not take it. At night, the fires are out. There is no fuel, no will. The rooms are dark except for moonlight or the flicker of a single candle passed from hand to hand. You lie with your eyes open, listening to the breathing of others, some shallow, some deep, some no longer there. You think of home, though the memory is fading. The feel of grass underfoot, the sound of a river, the weight of a full belly. You wonder if the cottage still stands, if the cows survived, if anyone waits. More than once you wonder if you will. Hope is not gone, but it no longer stands upright. It sits in the corner, quiet and tired, waiting. The final days of the siege are not marked by trumpets or banners. They are marked by silence, by rot, by the steady rhythm of lives fading away. And still, the walls hold. For now. The end does not arrive with banners or bells. It comes with a whisper. One morning, though it may have been evening, the hours no longer matter. You are awakened not by shouting, but by the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, not running, not panicked, just walking. You open your eyes to a dull grey light. You sit up. Others are stirring too, some coughing, some groaning softly. No one speaks at first. There is an understanding between you, a silent recognition that something has changed. Then you hear it. The creak of the portcullis. The chains groan as they unwind. Iron grinds against iron. You do not rise to see it. You remain where you are, your back against the cold wall, watching dust swirl in a shaft of light. Someone moves past you, slowly, toward the inner gate. You do not follow. Not yet. You know what it means. The gate is opening. The siege is over. Surrender, when it comes, is not dramatic. There are no negotiations, no final stands, no charges into glory. There is only the soft clatter of weapons laid down, a sword placed carefully on the floor, a bow unstrung, a door unbarred. The soldiers of King John enter without resistance. Their boots are clean, their eyes alert. They move through the castle like men inspecting a ruin. Their noses wrinkle at the smell. Their gazes linger on the bundles in the corners, the unmoving shapes beneath old cloaks. They do not speak cruelly. They do not need to. You are not captured. You are simply seen, thin, ragged, covered in ash and filth. Your hands tremble, but not from fear, from emptiness. One of the king's men offers you a cup of water. You drink it slowly. You do not thank him. You do not speak at all. Some are taken away. The leaders, the knights, the barons who ordered the resistance. They are bound but not beaten. Their fate, you know, is sealed. Others are left behind, sent away, too sick to be dangerous, too broken to resist. You are among them. You do not know where to go. You walk down the stone steps, through the broken gate, past the place where the siege machines once stood. The ground outside is bare now, scarred with ruts, littered with ash and broken wood. The enemy camps have been taken down, the fire pits cold, the celebration brief already forgotten. No one follows you. You pass through the outskirts of the town. Rochester itself is quiet. Its people, those who stayed, peer from doorways. Some offer food, most do not. You do not blame them. Your legs carry you forward, though weakly. The road ahead is long, and the world feels unfamiliar.
Larger than you remember, too open, too wide. You think perhaps of home, if you still have one. But more than anything, you think of silence. Not the silence of siege, the silence of fear, of hunger, of collapse. But a different silence, the one that follows noise, the one that fills the space after history has made its mark. The siege has ended, but it does not leave you.
The stone, the hunger, the waiting, it lives somewhere in you now. Quiet, like a second heartbeat, distant but steady. You do not speak of it. Others would not understand, but you carry it. As you walk through the frostbitten fields, as the wind stirs the dry branches, as the sky greys into evening, you carry it like a memory carved in stone. Imagine a place where the wind speaks louder than people, where stone paths lead nowhere, where the earth has slowly swallowed walls, doorways, lives. This place exists. Wharram Percy, nestled in a quiet fold of the Yorkshire wolds, is not a name spoken by many. There are no grand plaques, no monuments, no bustling tour groups. Only a valley curved and green, scattered with the low remnants of stone foundations, and watched over by the weathered tower of a medieval church. You stand there now in thought. The sun is pale, diffused through a clouded sky. A chill lingers in the air, not unpleasant but ancient. It brushes your skin with the sense of absence, of time stretched thin. The village is gone, but it was not always so. For centuries, Wharram Percy was a living place, humble, consistent, shaped by soil and season. Families lived here. Children ran across the greensward. Sheep bleated from enclosures nearby. The fields that now lay fallow were once furrowed by hand and plough. Season after season, the labour of generations pressed into the ground. But today you see only outlines of homes once warm, now marked by moss-softened stones no higher than a knee, a crumbling staircase leading nowhere, the remnants of walls that once held stories. If you walk softly, you may almost hear them. Footsteps echoing through memory, voices murmuring behind vanished doors. What happened here? That question drifts across the valley like morning mist. No single answer lingers. The cause of abandonment was not dramatic, not sudden. It was a slow unraveling, decades, perhaps centuries of retreat. Some say famine thinned the village. Others speak of plague, that old and quiet killer. Still others blame economic change, sheep farming, enclosure, the landlord's distant hand pulling the fabric of rural life apart. Perhaps it was all of these or none. Perhaps people left for reasons too ordinary to mark: love, opportunity, fatigue. And so the place emptied, house by house, voice by voice, until only the church remained, a stubborn remnant. Its tower, square and stoic, still casts a shadow. Once its bell rang daily, calling the faithful to prayer, marking births and deaths. Now the bell is gone. The silence is profound, but it is not lifeless. Grass grows where hearths once burned. Wildflowers climb between broken stones. Bees hum low over the remnants of gardens once tended. Trees press in from the edges of the field, reclaiming what was once cleared. And beneath your feet, the ground holds more than dirt. It holds memory. For years, no one came. But then they returned, not the villagers, but those seeking knowledge. Archaeologists, historians, people who brushed away centuries of soil, layer by layer, in search of understanding. They mapped the bones of the village, studied the way people lived and how they left. And in their silence the villagers began to speak again, not with words, but through objects, impressions, traces, a comb carved from bone, a coin lost beside a doorway, a cracked cup discarded near a hearth. These were not treasures, they were fragments, and in their ordinariness they revealed something extraordinary, that a village, once gone, can still linger. Not just in maps or museums, but in the bend of a path, in the weathering of stone, in the deep hush of a place that remembers. You walk slowly now past the outlines of longhouses, narrow stone-walled homes with earth floors and soot-dark beams. Each would have held a family, parents, children, maybe grandparents too, all beneath one thatched roof. You picture them gathered near the hearth, stirring a pot, mending clothes, preparing for market day or for mass. The past here is not dramatic, it is domestic, it is quiet, and because of that, it feels closer. This was not a place of knights or kings. This was a village of people like you, who worked, who hoped, who hurt, who rested, and then who left. Now the wind moves through the valley unchallenged. Birds wheel above the church tower, and the silence that hangs over Wharram Percy is not empty. It is full of time, full of traces, full of voices you almost hear, and if you listen softly, you may hear them still. Beneath the grassy surface of Wharram Percy lies a world still intact though buried, not in grand vaults or sealed tombs, but in shallow soil, in softened lines of stone, in the gentle accumulation of centuries. It began, as most discoveries do, with curiosity. In the 1940s, archaeologists arrived in this quiet valley, not in haste, but with patient hands and quiet minds. They pitched tents near the church ruins and began their work, not with shovels and force, but with brushes, notebooks and care. They did not expect treasure, they sought stories, and they found them. What remains of the village is not immediately visible to the untrained eye, but to those who look with intention, the clues are everywhere. The shallow depressions in the earth mark where longhouses once stood. Foundation stones peek through grass like the bones of the landscape itself. Hearths, simple, stone-lined pits, remain at the heart of each home, blackened with centuries-old soot. These were not grand homes. Each was built to function, rectangular, single-roomed, their walls of stone, their roofs once thatched with straw or turf. Inside, There would have been a central fire, low wooden furniture, straw bedding laid near the walls. No windows. Just a single door and perhaps a hole in the roof to let smoke rise. From the floors of these homes, archaeologists uncovered the tools of life. A broken spindle whirl smoothed by long use. Clay jugs, some whole, others fractured. Iron knives, simple in shape. Wooden buckets, their metal hoops rusted thin. Fragments of leather shoes, the stitching still visible in places. Each item ordinary, and yet, in that ordinariness, deeply moving. These were not symbols of wealth, they were signs of continuity, of meals cooked and shared, of garments mended beside the fire, of mornings spent preparing dough or boiling herbs, of quiet evenings, of life unfolding slowly without spectacle. Scattered across the village site were pits, refuse pits where broken items were tossed, along with bones, shells and ashes. From them we learn what was eaten, mutton and beef mostly. Some fowl, occasionally fish, likely dried or salted and brought inland. Grains too, barley, oats, rye, all ground by hand on stone querns worn smooth with use. Seeds have survived, fragments of charred bread, even pollen trapped in clay, telling us what plants grew nearby. Meadowsweet, dandelion, burdock, nettles. These were not just weeds, they were used for medicine, for flavouring, for necessity. One excavation revealed a small iron key. No one knows what it opened. A box, perhaps. A chest. Something now long vanished, leaving only the tool behind. You imagine the hands that turned it, the things it once protected. It is the smallest details that linger longest. Outside the homes there were paths, packed earth, compacted by footsteps. Children would have run here, chasing dogs, carrying buckets. Their footprints are gone, but the paths remain. The direction of traffic, the logic of movement. Even silence carries its own geometry. Fences divided yards, low stone walls marked boundaries. There were pens for animals, sheep mostly, and pigs, some stables for oxen. Horses, if they were ever present, would have been rare. Perhaps a priest's mount, perhaps a visiting steward, and always, near the centre, the church. It stood slightly apart, surrounded by graves. Even in abandonment it has endured. Its tower, worn by wind and lichen, still rises above the hilltop like a sentinel. Within its walls, services were held, baptisms, weddings, funerals. The same stone altar served for generations, its surface rubbed smooth by prayers, palms and candle wax. The archaeologists found a worn tile embedded in the chancel floor, just one, decorated faintly. The pattern was simple, but its placement just before the altar spoke of reverence, of care. Everything here was cared for in some way, even in poverty, even in toil, even in the hard rhythm of medieval life. The layers uncovered told a story not of collapse, but of continuity, of a village that lived quietly, worked daily, and faded slowly, not into ruin, but into rest. And now beneath the soil that rhythm waits, not broken, not forgotten, only buried, only quiet. The earth gives up its secrets slowly. At Wharram Percy, the bodies of the past were not hidden in grandeur. They were laid to rest in shallow graves, wrapped in simple shrouds, positioned with care and faith. There were no coffins, no carvings, no gold. Just soil and silence. But when the archaeologists began their work, gently, with brushes and patience, they uncovered what time had concealed. Skeletons, dozens, then hundreds, not as ossuaries or charnel houses, but as individual burials. Human remains, weathered by centuries, but still intact, still able to speak. Not in words, of course, but in the language of structure. in the curve of spine, the wear of joints, the healing of breaks, the erosion of teeth. Bones remember what skin forgets. The people of Wharram Percy lived hard lives. That much becomes clear in the lines etched into their very frames. Children's skeletons, small and fragile, often show signs of interrupted growth, evidence of malnutrition, fevers, or both. Their long bones, femurs, tibias, sometimes show growth arrest lines like rings in a tree, marking periods when the body paused, held in place by lack. A harsh winter, a poor harvest, an infection without cure. Even in adulthood, the evidence remains. The average lifespan was short, perhaps 35 to 40 years. Some lived longer, most did not. Teeth are worn to the pulp, ground down by stone fragments from hand-milled grain, by tough bread and root vegetables chewed without rest. Cavities were common, so were abscesses. In some cases, the jawbones show pitting from infection, where pus once drained through tissue, now long gone. The vertebrae, those delicate links of the spine, are crushed, narrowed, arthritic, from constant bending, lifting, repetition. Hips worn smooth by walking miles across uneven terrain. Knees thickened from squatting, rising, squatting, again. Every motion repeated, every year the same. Rib bones show signs of healed fractures, not from war or battle, but from accidents. Falls, mishandled livestock, a timber dropped during roof repairs, bones healed crooked because there was no surgeon to reset them. Only time and silence. Many show signs of osteoarthritis, swollen joints, rough bone edges, the kind that creeps in slowly, unnoticed, until movement becomes stiff and painful. Yet these people worked anyway. There was no alternative. One skeleton, likely a woman, shows severe arthritis in her hands and wrists. Her fingers fused in places, and yet she lived into her 40s, which meant she must have continued to work, to spin, to carry, even through pain, because she had to. Because the rhythm of the village demanded it. Another shows signs of a healed femur break, poorly aligned, the leg shortened slightly. You imagine him walking unevenly through the village, limping past the church, fetching water from the stream. He survived, which means others must have helped, carried water, shared bread, waited. The bones also carry signs of resilience. Not all lives were cut short. Some skeletons show few signs of hardship, strong bone density, limited dental decay. Perhaps they were fortunate. Perhaps they were cared for. Perhaps they lived at the right time, when the harvests were good, the winters mild, the disease kept at bay. But even those bones hold silence, a deep, enduring quiet. They do not tell of laughter, though surely there was some. They do not reveal the sound of voices, the rhythm of prayer, the heat of a hearth. Only the traces left behind. Still, that is enough. In the hollows of skulls and the curves of ribs, we see the outlines of a life not remembered in writing, but carved into the body itself. And in every grave, the same simplicity. No riches, no tombs, just bones laid east to west, always facing the rising sun, always in faith. They were not meant to be found, but now that they have been, they remind us that the past does not vanish. It settles, it rests, and if we are quiet, it speaks, not loudly, but enough. Some graves are smaller than others, so small, in fact, they barely disturb the soil. No more than the length of your arm, just enough to cradle a body that barely had time to live. At Wharram Percy, the cemetery is filled with such graves, dozens upon dozens of them, the remains of infants, toddlers, children no older than 5 or 6. Their bones, when uncovered, are delicate, fine as willow twigs, pale as chalk. The skulls, soft and thin, have collapsed slightly over time, the weight of the earth gently pressing them into the shape of the ground. They were buried with care. sometimes wrapped in cloth, sometimes placed in wooden boxes now long decayed. A few were laid with small offerings, perhaps a broken bead, a shard of pottery, a smooth pebble tucked in the fold of the shroud. Not gifts of grandeur, just tokens of love, and always they were placed close to the church. Not because they were important in life, but because they were loved. Because even in sorrow, the villagers of Wharram Percy sought nearness to the sacred, nearness to hope. The high number of child burials is not surprising to historians. In medieval times, infant mortality was heartbreakingly common. Illness, infection, cold, malnutrition, any of these could end a small life within days. But the bones at Wharram Percy make this reality more than a statistic. They make it personal. A tiny jawbone, barely formed, showing no signs of teeth. A femur no longer than a spoon handle. Ribs still growing, unfinished. These are not relics, they are memories, and they whisper stories we can only imagine. Perhaps the child had been born in winter, when food was scarce and fires too weak. Perhaps the mother was already weakened by years of childbirth. Perhaps the baby never cried, or cried for days without rest. Perhaps the family prayed over her in the chapel, begging for a miracle that never came. We do not know their names. No headstones mark the graves. No inscriptions tell us who they were. But their presence, so many in such number, speaks of a village shaped by love as much as loss. You wonder what it was like to live with such frequent grief, to hold a newborn close not knowing if she would live to see spring, to wrap a child in wool and place him in the earth before his first word had ever been spoken, to walk home in silence, hands empty. And yet, life continued. The villagers did not stop having children. They did not stop hoping. Each new baby was welcomed, named, baptized. Candles were lit, prayers were said. Lullabies were sung by the fire, soft and ancient. The rhythm of life endured, even when interrupted again and again by loss. Archaeologists found that some of the children had suffered long before death. Their bones showed signs of rickets, caused by lack of sunlight, of milk. Others had infections in the skull or abscesses in the teeth. Some showed evidence of deformities or congenital conditions that would have made survival even harder. But even in these fragile remains, there is resilience. Some children lived longer than expected. Their bones show growth interrupted, then resumed. Sickness survived. Hunger endured. You imagine them playing near the well, gathering berries, sitting beside a parent at the loom. And when they did pass, they were not discarded. They were held, wept over, buried near the church in sacred ground. This was not indifference. It was love, shaped by necessity. It was grief, made ordinary by repetition, but no less real. In the quiet cemetery at Wharram Percy, the children lie close together. Their graves cluster like wildflowers growing toward the chapel walls. There is no sound here now but the rustle of wind in the grass, the distant song of a bird, the soft crunch of leaves underfoot. But if you pause, if you listen, there is something else. A deep, gentle hush, the hush of memory, of lullabies long faded, of tiny hands once held, of lives too short but not forgotten. Not all stories buried at Wharram Percy are peaceful. Some are strange. In the later phases of excavation, after decades of study, after the church had given up its floor tiles and the cottages their potsherds, archaeologists turned their attention to the edges, not the sacred cemetery, but the margins, pits beyond the village walls, shallow graves dug hurriedly, carelessly, as though the dead within were not meant to be remembered. It was there, in these disturbed places, that they found something unexpected, Bones, human bones, but not in repose, not in the quiet symmetry of faith. These were scattered, separated. A femur on one side, a jawbone on another, vertebrae piled loosely as if tossed, skulls cracked, ribs burned, limbs broken apart not by time, but by hands. They were adult remains mostly, all from the same period, somewhere between the 11th and 14th centuries. They had been buried after death, but not gently, and not whole. At first the finds puzzled the researchers. They wondered if it was grave robbery, or perhaps disturbed burials moved by animal scavengers, but the pattern did not match. Then the theory came, unsettling, but grounded in precedent. These were apotropaic burials. Burials meant not to honor the dead, but to restrain them. Across parts of medieval Europe, particularly in rural communities, there are traces of folk beliefs surrounding the restless dead. In the minds of those who feared them, death did not always bring stillness. A person who had lived poorly, died suddenly, or remained unshriven might rise again, not as a spirit, but as a physical presence. A corpse that wandered, that harmed, that brought sickness. A revenant. To prevent such returns, certain rituals were performed. A body might be decapitated, the legs broken, the chest staked, the remains burned, and then buried far from consecrated ground. Not all believed this, of course, but some did, enough for the custom to survive in memory, in whispers, and, here at Wharram Percy, in bone. It is important to say that these were rare findings. Most burials at the site were normal, respectful. But these few strange graves hint at a moment when fear crept into ritual, when belief blurred with desperation, when death, instead of peace, inspired dread. Perhaps the person had died suddenly. Perhaps they had been different in life, an outsider, a stranger, someone who stirred unease. Perhaps illness followed their passing, and blame took root. We do not know. The evidence is incomplete, and the past rarely speaks in full sentences. But what we can see is care. A different kind of care, not love, but fear made formal. The placement of stones, the signs of burning, the deliberate separation of parts. These were not accidents, they were acts of prevention, of protection. The villagers, it seems, were not trying to desecrate the dead, but to protect the living. You imagine the night they did it, torches flickering in the fields, the sky heavy with clouds, the whisper of prayers not spoken aloud but muttered beneath breath. A group of men solemn, carrying a burden they did not fully understand.
Not vengeance, not hatred, but ritual passed down through years, performed with trembling hands. And then quiet again. The field returned to darkness. The village to sleep. We may never know who those individuals were. Their names, their lives, their stories are gone. But their bones remain, fragmented, scorched, rearranged. Not forgotten. Simply feared.
And today, when archaeologists study them, they do so with respect. There is no need to dramatize. The past is not a place for spectacle, it is a place for listening, even to the unsettling, even to the quiet echo of fear. Because fear, too, is part of life, even in a village as peaceful as Wharram Percy. The wind still moves through the valley. It brushes the tall grasses, rustles through the trees that edged the site, and slips between the low stones that once formed walls, thresholds, foundations. The sun casts long shadows in the late afternoon. Birds circle the tower of the old church, its stonework still standing, weathered by rain and time. There is nothing here now but stillness.
And yet, everything remains. Wharram Percy is no longer a village, but it is not truly lost. It breathes in a different rhythm now, one of memory and quiet observation, of footfalls along soft paths, of distant voices on the wind, of people who come not to live, but to listen.
You walk slowly across the uneven ground. The outlines of longhouses emerge around you, simple rectangles of stone, just high enough to suggest space. You pause beside one. A home, once. Perhaps the one where the woman with the arthritic hands lived, or the man who walked with a crooked leg, or the child who never spoke a word. No one knows for certain. But the stones hold a shape that feels familiar. The echo of domestic rhythm. A fire once burned here. Bread was once baked. Someone sang here, or laughed, or wept. You continue on. Near the center of the site stands the church. Its tower watches over the land like a silent guardian. The roof is long gone. Inside, the floor is open to the sky. Grass grows between the gravestones, many unmarked, others faded to softness by wind and rain. You step gently here. Not out of fear, but out of reverence. This is where generations came to rest, to release their burdens, to sleep. The landscape around Wharram Percy has changed and yet remained the same. The fields have returned to nature, but their shapes follow old lines. A low stone wall runs along a ridge, separating pasture from what was once common land. A footpath curves near the stream, where water still flows quietly over stone. A gate creaks in the distance. Time has done what it always does. It has softened the edges. The village did not fall to fire or war or sudden violence. It faded. Its people moved on, some to nearby towns, others to distant cities. Some perhaps went only as far as the next valley. The houses collapsed. The paths grew over. The church stood longest. And when it too was abandoned, the land returned to quiet. And yet, the stories linger. Not in text, but in texture. Not in sound, but in shadow. Archaeologists have studied the site for decades. Their reports fill shelves. Their drawings and records offer precision. But no book can replicate what it feels like to stand here, to breathe in the quiet, to trace a finger along a weathered stone, to pause and remember that this place once pulsed with ordinary life. You do not need to know the names to feel the presence. That is the gift of Wharram Percy. It does not demand attention. It does not shout its history. It offers it gently, like the breeze across your face, like the soft hush of wind through the grass, like the echo of footsteps long since faded. It is a place that teaches you to listen. And as you stand at the edge of the village looking out over the rolling hills of the Wolds, you understand that not all stories are preserved in parchment or monuments. Some are preserved in absence, in the places where life once was, in the silence that follows. And that too is history. The chamber is still. You wake not to sunlight or songbirds, but to the soft shuffle of feet on rush-strewn stone. A servant has entered, silent, careful. She carries a bowl of warm water, steam curling into the morning air like breath from another world. You do not speak, not yet. Words come slowly in this place, gathered deliberately like folds of fine cloth. Instead, you sit up. Your bed is a canopy, hung with heavy fabric embroidered in muted gold thread. The frame is carved oak, its posts wrapped with wool against the winter air. The mattress is deep and stuffed with straw, covered in linen, with a layer of fine wool over top. Beneath the covers, you are warm. Beyond them, the air bites. The room is high-walled, its stone blocks cold to the touch, though softened by tapestries that hang like woven memories. Scenes of saints and battles, hunting parties frozen in thread, a forest stitched with mythical beasts. The colours have faded, but the stories remain. Your feet touch a wooden stool. A second servant kneels there, gently slipping warm cloth slippers onto your feet. They have been embroidered by hand, perhaps by a young lady of the household, perhaps gifted. You do not remember. You do not need to. A third servant holds out your robe, lined with fur, its clasp shaped like a lion's head. You rise and shrug it on slowly, your body waking with each movement. You cross to the basin and wash your hands, your face, your neck, in water that smells faintly of rosemary and lavender. The basin is polished pewter, the cloth soft and freshly folded. Outside, the sound of court begins to stir. Boots on flagstone, the murmur of voices, the creak of timber doors. You hear the clatter of the cook's staff in the distant kitchens. A bell rings softly in the chapel, calling the first prayers. You sit on a cushioned bench near the window. A servant opens the shutters. The light is pale, filtered through grey clouds and the thin lattice of glass, costly, slightly distorted. You see the inner courtyard, where snow from the night before still clings to the edges of the well. A stable boy carries hay to the horses. A falconer adjusts a glove on his wrist. The world has already begun. You are simply entering it. Your breakfast arrives not with ceremony, but with silence. A simple wooden tray, warm ale in a pewter cup, a slice of dark bread, a soft cheese wrapped in linen, a poached egg, its shell cracked gently. You eat slowly, always slowly. There is no rush in courtly life, only rhythm. As you eat, a young page reads aloud the morning psalm. His voice is soft, practiced. The words wash over you. You know them by heart, but you let them come anyway. They are not for instruction. They are for stillness. When the food is cleared, dressing begins. Not simply clothing. This is a process of transformation, layer by layer, from linen to wool, from undergown to overtunic, from belt to clasp. Each item serves not only comfort, but rank. Fabric is language here. A tightly woven wool says prudence. An imported silk trim whispers wealth. A well-chosen brooch might signal favour or allegiance. You lift your arms as your gown is fitted over your shoulders. The sleeves fall like drapes. A belt is tied around your waist, ornamented but not ostentatious. A hooded mantle is placed across your shoulders. Its fastenings are made of bronze, with the family crest etched into their curves. Everything fits. Everything means something. You glance into the polished surface of a small mirror, its reflection clouded, imperfect. But it is enough. You look the part. A noble. A presence. The air still smells of the fire burned overnight, now mostly embers. A servant adds a new log, then withdraws. You place a ring on your finger, not for vanity, but because it was your father's. Because others will notice. Because symbols are read before words are spoken. A knock at the door. Another servant enters to announce the steward has arrived. He brings messages, updates from the kitchen. A matter of land dispute, or a guest's late arrival. You nod, you say little. The answers will come in their time. And with that, your day begins. You leave the chamber, stepping into a corridor dimly lit by narrow windows and a row of candles guttering in iron sconces. The stone beneath your feet is cold even through your slippers, but your steps are measured. You are not alone, and your movements are always watched, not out of fear, but because every moment in court is performance, and yours has just begun. The corridor you walk is narrow and shadowed, lined with stone warmed only faintly by the morning hearths in nearby rooms. The air smells of wax, linen, and faintly of smoke from the kitchen flues below. Your footsteps do not echo. The rushes underfoot, mixed with dried lavender and chamomile, muffle your steps. A page follows a few paces behind, carrying a small ledger, a wax tablet, and a pouch of sealing tools. Your hands are free, but your thoughts are not. The morning is not for leisure, it is for attention. In the solar, a chamber bright with narrow light from glazed windows, you meet with the steward. He bows, a practiced motion, and lays out a series of scrolls and notes across the oaken table. The steward is lean, quiet-spoken and exacting. He does not waste your time. You review expenditures: wool from the weavers, salted fish brought in from the coast, grain deliveries from a neighbouring manor. Each item is not just a cost, but a relationship, a promise, an obligation. You do not approve these things alone, of course, but your seal carries weight, and every mark you make on the parchment speaks not only of approval, but of authority remembered. Next come letters. Some are expected: communications from nearby nobles, courteous notes on estate matters or seasonal invitations. Others are more delicate: a veiled complaint from a lesser baron, a soft request for your presence at a hunt you would rather not attend, a reminder from the abbey regarding a forgotten donation. You read them in silence. Some are answered with a word or two passed to a scribe, others are set aside for later thought. The room is quiet. A fire burns low in the hearth. The steward's quill scratches softly against parchment. You sip a small cup of watered wine. The warmth it brings is not intoxicating,
only settling.
Later you rise and walk the long gallery. It is lined with portraits, ancestors, patrons, saints. The painted eyes watch as you pass, their gazes fixed in expressions of piety, resolve, or calm indifference. The wooden floor creaks faintly beneath your shoes. You do not hurry. Each step is purposeful, each pause at a window a small, silent performance. You meet others along the way. Fellow nobles, stewards, visiting clergy. You greet them with nods, slight bows, brief words chosen with care. The words are never too casual, never too warm. Warmth in court is currency and should not be spent without purpose. Your body speaks before your voice does, how you incline your head, whether you extend your hand, whether you allow yourself to smile. A glance that lasts too long might imply favour. One too brief might insult. Every gesture is weighed. The garden is quiet this morning. A few ladies walk along the paths, their hoods drawn, their hands folded. A gardener tends the herbs near the fountain: mint, rue, lavender. You recognize the scent on the breeze. It blends with the earthy smell of fresh-turned soil. You do not linger long. This is not a morning for reflection, but for visibility. To be seen, standing straight, clothed well, offering just enough presence to remain remembered, but not enough to draw suspicion. At court, to be overlooked is to wither. Be too visible is to risk. You return indoors. The chapel bell chimes softly in the distance, marking the hour. A low, metallic tone that rolls through the air like breath. The rhythm of your day continues, one obligation fulfilled, another drawing near. You pause once more in the corridor, standing before a stained glass window. Light filters through, fractured into patterns of gold and blue across the stone. It settles on your robes, your hands. You do not move. In this moment, just for a breath, you are still. Then the page approaches with a message, and you turn again, as always, toward duty. By midday, the weight of the day has settled gently across your shoulders, not as a burden, but as a presence. You feel it in the way others watch you, in the stillness of the chamberlain's posture when you enter a room, in the way each hour must be accounted for, each exchange considered. You make your way to the great chamber. Not the hall, that will come later, but the room where more delicate matters are seen to. Here the walls are dressed in woven tapestries, stories of saints, of conquest, of gardens in bloom. The air carries the scent of warmed wax and ink. A long table dominates the space, flanked by high-backed chairs. The room is not crowded, only those invited may enter. You sit. Across from you, the steward of a neighbouring estate bows and begins to speak, not loudly, not quickly. There is a land dispute, as there always seems to be, a stretch of pasture once shared, now claimed. The details are dull, but their implications are not. Ownership is power. Influence is built on the smallest fields. You listen, nod, pause. A clerk records your words. Another reads from the charter. A third holds a book of law, its leather cover softened by decades of touch. The discussion continues, polite, precise, slightly tense. It does not end today, but progress is made, a compromise suggested, a line drawn, though not yet marked. Afterward, another petitioner steps forward, a stonemason, old and weathered, with knees that no longer bend as they once did. He asks for continued patronage, a small grant perhaps to finish the carving on the chapel arch. He brings a piece of stone in hand, delicately chiselled into a rose, its petals opening from the core. You run your fingers over its surface. Cool, fine, beautiful. You nod. The request is granted. It is not the coin that matters, but the gesture. A noble is a patron, a protector. To support the arts is to shape not only stone but memory. Later you step into the chapel. It is a small space, quiet even in daylight. The windows let in a filtered glow, coloured by glass and softened by dust. The air is cool, scented faintly with incense and age. A priest stands near the altar, murmuring the final lines of terce, the third canonical hour. You kneel, not out of obligation, but rhythm. You whisper the prayers not from fervour, but familiarity. Your knees press against the worn cushion. The stone beneath is cold. You remember the names you have been taught to pray for, your family, your allies, your liege. You remember too those who have passed, some who served you, some who stood beside you, some whose names are spoken only in silence. The candle beside you flickers once, then steadies. Time passes here, but slowly. After prayers you do not return to your rooms. Instead you walk the lower corridors, checking briefly on the scriptorium. The scribes are bent over parchment, their hands steady, their breath even. One copies a letter for the abbot of a neighbouring priory. Another illuminates a capital with gold leaf, carefully, reverently, with a brush no thicker than a reed. You linger, just for a moment. Even these quiet tasks are part of your domain. They do not require your hand, but your presence is remembered. By early afternoon you are shown a tapestry nearing completion. It hangs in one of the lesser chambers, stretched tight on a frame. It depicts a hunting scene, hounds, a stag, a forest rendered in stitched green and brown. The work is detailed, the hands that made it skilled. You offer praise, but lightly. Enough to be encouraging, not indulgent. Such moments build trust. Position. Continuity. And continuity is the foundation upon which a noble house survives. A bell tolls distantly, once, then twice. The hour draws near when formality will give way to spectacle. The hall is being prepared. Tables dressed, fireplaces stoked, dishes laid in anticipation, but not yet. You return to your chamber briefly. Your robe is adjusted, your hair smoothed. A ring exchanged for another, this one bearing your house's crest. You catch your reflection, faint and flickering, in the polished basin. Not proud, not weary, simply composed. There is no room for uncertainty here. And so you prepare to descend, to enter the hall, to take your place. Not just at the table, but in the structure of court itself. The great hall breathes. It is a long vaulted chamber, lit by the soft flicker of dozens of candles. They hang in iron chandeliers and sit nestled in high sconces along the stone walls, their flames dancing in rhythm with the fire, crackling at the far end of the room. The air is warm now, rich with the scent of roasted meat, warm bread, spiced wine, and beeswax. But despite this there is no noise, not truly. Voices are low, footsteps measured. Laughter, if it comes, is light and brief. This is not a place of riotous celebration. It is a place of order, of grace, of silent codes that govern every movement. You enter, not with flourish, but with calm. A steward announces your presence, a soft voice, clear but never loud. All eyes turn, briefly, respectfully, as you walk to your place at the high table. Not at its center, perhaps, but near it. Position at the feast is a message unto itself. You sit. The cushion beneath you is embroidered. The goblet before you is silver, polished until it catches every flicker of light. The plate is pewter, the knife beside it narrow and curved. A servant stands behind, silent, watching for a gesture. To dine here is not merely to eat, it is to be seen eating. The feast begins not with a meal, but with a ritual. A basin is brought, a servant kneels with a ewer of warm water and a bowl. Your hands are washed gently by another's. A linen cloth is passed for drying. It is not cleansing, it is ceremony, the gesture of sanctifying what is to come. Then the first course is presented. A trencher of bread, thick and square, serves as both plate and offering. Upon it, a small portion of stewed pears, sweetened with honey and cloves, a sip of warmed ale. You eat slowly, gracefully. Others follow your pace. Next, meats, roasted pheasant, carved by the carver in clean, practiced motions. Stewed venison with rosemary. A sauce of almond milk and raisins. None of it is overwhelming. Portions are modest. The variety, not the quantity, defines the richness of the meal. You speak little. When you do, it is measured. Soft phrases shared with the person beside you. Perhaps a comment on the quality of the bread. Perhaps a question about a cousin's estate. Every word is watched, every smile noted. The musicians begin to play, not loudly. A quiet arrangement, a lute, a harp, a soft voice singing in a language half familiar. Their music fills the corners of the room, gentle and unintrusive, weaving between conversation and candlelight. More courses come and go. Spiced lampreys in a vinegar sauce, saffron rice brought from the southern ports, a pie shaped like a fish, its crust fluted and glazed, all brought by servants who move like shadows, unnoticed until needed, always present. You touch little of it. To feast here is not to indulge, it is to exist within a ritual that has little to do with hunger. There is a structure to everything. You sip wine only after the host has done so. You wipe your hands on the cloth only when the person beside you does the same. You do not reach. You wait. When food is passed, you take only what is offered, and always with the right hand. Dessert is a gesture more than a course. Spiced wafers, candied fruits, marzipan shaped like a castle turret. A small goblet of hippocras, wine steeped with cinnamon and herbs. You hold it, savor it, and drink slowly. There is no toast, no cheer, only silence growing deeper as the candles burn lower. At the end, the basin returns. Hands are washed again, the cloths replaced. The steward thanks the guests. The host offers a nod. No one rises until they do. And then you stand. The meal is done. But the meaning lingers. What you ate matters less than how. What was said matters less than what was observed. A feast is not just a meal in court. It is a mirror. And you have passed through it, quiet and composed. The great hall does not empty after the feast. Instead, it softens. The torches are lowered. The fire burns lower, casting a gentler light against the walls and making the gold thread in tapestries shimmer as if stirring in their woven scenes. Servants move quietly, clearing dishes, sweeping crumbs, adding fresh rushes to the corners. They do not speak unless spoken to. Chairs are rearranged in semicircles around the hearth. Cushions are brought. Goblets are refilled, not for thirst, but for comfort. This is not the business of the day, nor the solemnity of prayer. This is the evening ritual. Entertainment, yes, but also presence, observation, quiet maneuvering. A minstrel steps forward. He is not finely dressed but neat, his hands calloused from string and wood. He carries a lute. Its sound, once plucked, is soft as rain against a chapel roof. He sings not loudly, but clearly. His voice echoes slightly in the high-ceilinged room, smooth and slow, telling stories of knights and wandering lovers, of hunts beneath moonlight, of noble women lost in towers. You listen, as do the others. You do not smile too widely, you do not applaud. Appreciation here is shown in posture, in attention, in a glance exchanged between nobles, one that says, "I remember this tale," or perhaps, "This singer is new." Next comes a mask, a short performance, nothing elaborate. A handful of players dressed in pale cloth and simple masks. They perform a tale from legend, perhaps Tristan and Isolde, perhaps a parable. The words are familiar, but the gestures are new. The audience watches, not rapt, but reflective. Some speak during the play, softly, behind hands, beneath breath. This is part of the ritual too. These murmurs are not interruptions. They are conversation folded inside spectacle. Here, gossip blooms in the quiet. Who is missing from the evening? Who left before dessert? Who offered an unexpected compliment over the fish course? You contribute only occasionally. A short phrase, a raised eyebrow, a small smile that can mean many things. Your words carry more weight now than they did in the morning, not because you are more powerful, but because everyone is more porous. The fire makes people softer. The wine makes silences longer. The shadows give shape to thoughts not spoken aloud. A nobleman speaks of a hunt, casually, but looks at you too directly. A lady recounts a cousin's marriage, but her tone suggests something else entirely. Every phrase is a thread in a web of suggestion. To speak too plainly would be rude. To understand too quickly would be dangerous. Instead, you nod, you reply in turn. You let meanings hang between your words like banners left to flutter. By now, the performance has ended. The players bow, then leave. The musicians begin again, a quieter tune, this time only harp and voice. The tempo slow, almost lullaby-like. A few nobles retire early, others linger by the hearth. One stares into the flames, another gently adjusts a ring on her finger, again and again. You notice all of it, but you do not speak of it, because at court, knowing is private, and sharing is currency best spent sparingly. You sip from your goblet, now cool. You speak briefly to the steward of a nearby manor. You offer a kind word to the woman beside you. You laugh once, lightly, deliberately. Just enough. The evening passes like this, elegant, glacial, careful. No great declarations, no revelry. Only gestures, glances, and the long, measured exhale of another day, done in dignity. The candles are burning lower now. The music has faded. The players departed. The goblets emptied and forgotten on tables, slowly cleared by unseen hands. Even the hearth, once crackling with orange heat, has softened into quiet embers. The hall is nearly empty. You rise, no one watches now, or if they do, it is only in passing. You cross the floor with slow steps, trailing silence behind you. The corridor beyond the hall is cooler. The air smells faintly of ash and iron. Torches in wall sconces gutter gently as you pass, your shadow shifting against stone. At your chamber door, a servant waits. She says nothing, only bows her head and opens the door wide. Inside, the room is dim. A single lamp glows near the hearth. The fire has been laid, but not yet lit. It will burn low through the night, more for comfort than warmth. Your bed has been prepared. The coverlet is turned down, the wool sheets smoothed by practiced hands. A warming stone lies at its center. Your garments are carefully folded on the oaken chest. Beside your bed, a cup of warm wine with honey, a basin with lavender water, a single beeswax candle already lit, its scent familiar and faintly floral. You breathe in the quiet. The air feels heavier here, not oppressive, but contained. The thick stone walls mute the world beyond. The night presses softly against the shutters but cannot enter. Servants help remove your robe, your belt. The heavier garments of the day, you slip into a linen shift. The cloth is cool at first, then comforting. You sit at the edge of the bed, feet tucked beneath you, and drink the wine slowly. It is warm and gentle, not sharp. It eases the transition from performance to rest. The last servant bows and leaves. You are alone now. You cross to the small window. It does not open, but you lean close. Outside, the courtyard is dark. The snow has settled along the stones. A single guard walks the path, his lantern swinging with each step. Beyond that, nothing, just night. You speak a brief prayer, not aloud but within, for protection, for clarity, for peace. Then you draw the curtain and return to the bed. The sheets whisper as you slip beneath them. The heat from the stone has begun to fade, but it has left its trace. The wool is thick, the linen soft with years of use. You pull the covers to your chin. Your eyes close easily. The room holds you. This place, for all its ceremony, is not only power. It is structure, shelter, a place where even uncertainty has boundaries. The outside world waits, with all its shifting allegiances and silences shaped like swords. But not here, not tonight. Here there is only the soft rhythm of your breath and the fading light of the candle and the hush of your own quiet thoughts. Sleep comes not as a surprise, but as an inheritance, the final part of the day's long ritual, a descent not into escape, but into softness. You do not dream of glory. You dream of still corridors, of candlelight, of walking slowly, unseen, through your own halls. And when the candle at last gutters into darkness, it leaves behind not emptiness, but peace. You've walked far tonight, through dirt paths worn into the fields by peasant feet, through the smoke-choked stairwells of a castle under siege, through empty cottages where children once laughed, now hushed by centuries, through velvet-draped corridors where power walked in soft shoes, and in each place a different rhythm, different walls, different names, but the same quiet pulse beneath it all, a rhythm of daily life, of endurance, of repetition. We often think of history as events, battles, kings, laws, but most of it was far quieter than that. It was a pair of hands washing in a basin, a spoon scraping a pot, a prayer whispered before sleep, a fire banked low. Even in struggle there was structure. Even in fear there was ritual. Even in silence there was meaning. Now as you rest in your own time, your own room, your own warmth, perhaps you feel that contrast. You have walked through lives where comfort was rare, where rest was uncertain, where each day was shaped by labor, obedience, or survival. And yet in all of it, humanity remained. They loved, they mourned, they prayed, they hoped, just as you do. And now their stories sleep in soil, in stone, in memory, and so perhaps should you. Let the stillness of their world settle softly around you. Let the rhythm of footsteps past lull you toward dreams. Let the weight of history fall away until all that remains is quiet. You have seen enough for tonight, and now it is time to rest. Sleep well.